Welcome to another episode of Border Report Live. My name is Sandra Sanchez. I'm coming to you from Harlingen, Texas, deep in South Texas. I'm filling in for Rudy Mireles. A little bit later, we will bring in our Southern California correspondent, Salvador Rivera, to talk to us about a number of issues, including teachers in California that want more protection for schools, as well as some environmental concerns in the Tijuana River Valley. But first, some headlines. Many cities across the country are trying to keep their police officers from assisting immigration agents under arrest undocumented immigrants. The City Council in Columbus, Ohio, put new safeguards in place as immigration enforcement activity reportedly increases in the city. Council members said they do not have authority over federal immigration and customs enforcement agents. However, they believe the city does have the power to regulate what happens on city-owned property.
I believe that we are doing right by every citizen in Columbus, regardless of your immigration status, period.
We can't control the bad acts of individuals out in the streets. What we can control is the legislative framework that we're asking and putting into place to try and control that.
If passed, the legislation would prohibit ICE agents from detaining people on city property without a judicial warrant and prohibit the construction of immigration detention centers within Columbus city limits and more. Moving on, last week, a federal judge in Minneapolis ruled in favor of several churches by issuing an injunction prohibiting immigration enforcement from operating in and around houses of worship. The churches filed a lawsuit last summer against the Department of Homeland Security, filing to overturn a Trump administration policy that allowed immigration enforcement actions to take place at churches and other houses of worship, reversing decades of protocols. The judge's ruling protected churches that are part of the American Baptist Churches USA, Alliance of Baptists, Metropolitan Community Churches, and several regional synods of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, protecting them from immigration enforcement actions.
I'm very well aware of two other churches that have been targeted by ICE, that they have been parking lot incidents, basically. And this would keep them from being on the property at all.
Now, Pastor Hendricks says that they will not consider this an end to the war for religious freedom, but he says we celebrate this victory in the ongoing struggle to maintain true freedom. I'm going to bring in our Southern California correspondent, Salvador Rivera, who recently we had a brief discussion yesterday about the National Education Association in a similar lawsuit, but this pertains to schools. Tell us about it, Sal.
Sandra, the NEA is hoping for a similar ruling. Last week they filed a court action. They're hoping that a judge will rule just like another judge ruled on the places of worship. They're hoping to keep ICE out of schools and around campuses. The NEA's lawsuit or legal action involves 60 teachers from 18 different states across the country. They are saying that ICE operations in and around schools are intimidating students and their parents, and a lot of parents are deciding to keep their children out of school, hurting their children's education. They're saying kids are getting stopped, not only on campus, outside, but also like places such as bus stops. They cited one instance where they said that ICE operations outside of the school disrupted the students who were in a playground. They said that ICE agents deployed tear gas and the smoke filtered onto a school playground where a lot of children were playing. So they're saying there's many ways how ICE agents, ICE operations are disrupting schools, disrupting the quality of life on campus. And they want ICE operations to come to an end. And they're hoping that a judge does decide to stop all ICE operations around schools and in campuses.
I remember you mentioned that the lawsuit was actually filed in Oregon. You mentioned that teachers are getting in the mix, trying to actually help warn families that could be afraid to bring children to school by maybe even setting up roving patrols at bus stops and near schools, and setting up warning systems to try to tell some families if they see suspicious federal vehicles or vehicles that appear to be federal vehicles, that maybe they don't want to take that route on a specific day?
That's what they're doing. A lot of teachers show up early. They get in their cars and they drive around in the neighborhoods outside their schools. And they have developed these blogs, this way to chat sites where they can talk to one another if they spot what they believe to be a federal vehicle or agents getting ready. They simply start communicating, asking parents to maybe stay away from the campus. We've also heard that there are schools where the teachers are giving up their parking spots inside school grounds where parents can actually drive in, park, drop off the kids, and then drive off. So this way they don't run the risk of being outside, and as they're taking their children onto the school, that they might get stopped or worse, apprehended.
Churches and schools have always been sanctuary places, so I guess it's now up to the judiciary to decide whether immigration enforcement operations are going to trump what has traditionally been these safe spaces. Stick with us, Sal. We're going to come back to you in a second. Yesterday, you were at a meeting where California gubernatorial candidate Katie Porter said she is going to declare a state of emergency for the Tijuana River sewage crisis if elected governor during her visit to the South Bay on Tuesday. Sewage pollution in the Tijuana River, I understand, has caused odors and environmental and health concerns for locals. And I think that you have some video for us that you shot yesterday. You talk about this former congresswoman from Orange County, how she toured these hot spots and how it is visiting impacted communities.
What I'm looking at here in terms of the Tijuana River.
California gubernatorial candidate Katie Porter came to the Tijuana River Valley after accepting an invitation to visit from San Diego County Supervisor Paloma Aguirre. Together, they spent time with community leaders and residents. They also visited some of the problem areas along the Tijuana River Valley.
You can talk about this ad nauseum and talk about hydrogen sulfide smells, rotten egg smells, exposure to pathogens, until you live it and breathe it and your throat starts to burn, your eyes water, and you feel nauseous from the stench. That is important for our next governor to experience.
What I saw today was people of California being poisoned.
Porter said she can see why this is such a big problem and pledged to declare a state of emergency if she becomes governor.
The beach here has been closed for 1,200 days, right? So there's a lot of economic loss, a lot of public health loss occurring by not fixing it up. The governor declaring this a state of emergency, opening up the doors to more cooperation and more federal resources would help. Today I was really interested in going to one of the hot spots, the Saturn Boulevard hotspot, and I was wearing a very protective respirator mask. I have heard again and again from residents, including today, about the smell, and it was worse than described. Flow of the river, the quantity of water, the stench of the river was worse than I have even had them described to me. The community that's living along the Tijuana River Valley is a community of color. It is a lower income community. And so we know that if this were happening in a very expensive coastal community, people would be up in arms about it.
Porter praised the upgrading of the International Wastewater Treatment Plant, but said more needs to get done to clean and filter the materials that come in via the Tijuana River, which never gets near the treatment plant.
What's flowing into the river is not just sewage. It's industrial waste. It's chemical pollution from polluting factories, 80% of which are U.S. owned. As much as I support and am proud to have fought to successfully double the capacity of the sewage treatment facility, that is not enough to clean this up. We have to deal with the river.
Aguirre said
We look forward to touring the rest of the candidates.
Salvador Rivera, Border Report.
Now, heavy rains this week in Southern California are causing even more problems in the Tijuana River Valley. Salvador was at the river this morning. Sal, did you wear the respirator on your face? Because I know you've covered this many, many times for us over the years. What's going on there? How's the smell downstream?
Yeah, I did not. Don't have access to one of those
We need
hazmat
to get you one.
type of. Okay, so I just wore a basic face mask that we all wore during the COVID era. But even with that mask, you can still smell it. You can feel it. As Katie Porter was saying, actually, Paloma Aguirre was saying she was a supervisor with San Diego County, formerly the mayor of Imperial Beach, which is the city most affected by the sewage runoff, as we heard in that story, for 1,200 straight days. The beaches have been closed in Imperial Beach because of the sewage that comes in from Mexico, flows through the Tijuana River Valley out into the Pacific Ocean, and then that stuff filters out along the water. The currents take it north, sometimes to the south, and it forces the shutdown of the beaches because it's just not safe to swim in that water. You get sick, intestinal issues, you get staph infections. Surfers are often coming down with what's called surfer ear, which is an infection. And so this is prevalent. But think about it. 1,200 days, consecutive days where the beach is up and closed. Think about your favorite park, your favorite playground.
Well,
Where it's closed for 1,200 days and you can't enjoy it. That is what's going on here. It is really hurting the quality of life of all of us who live in South San Diego.
Well, just to reiterate, when we kicked off borderreport.com in 2019, we took a border tour from San Diego back to Brownsville, almost 2 weeks long. We started there. The story I did was Imperial Beach. I interviewed the mayor at the time, who was a surfer. The beach was closed at the time. The smell was strong. People were cleaning up the beach. It happened to be beach cleanup day, but nobody in the water. Now, that was 6.5 years ago. So that's an incredible amount of time.
And then with the current storms that we're having this week, started Monday, you're seeing a lot more of this runoff, and the stuff comes in from Mexico. A lot of it should be going to the International Wastewater Treatment Plant, which is being refurbished, which is good. It'll help.
IBWC is giving some money for that, right? Yeah.
Right. So when it is completed, it's going to be a huge help. But when it does rain a lot and it's getting inundated with stuff, they shut it down because it cannot handle the flow. So basically, when it rains, they just turn off the pumps and all that stuff goes right into the Tijuana River Valley. And this is something we stress. There's a lot of material that comes in from a sister facility just south of the border into the treatment plant. But there's a lot more that comes in via the Tijuana River, which is outside or away from the treatment plant. So the materials, these industrial waste, chemicals, raw sewage that's coming in via the Tijuana River will never get near the treatment plant and will never be cleaned. And therefore, all this stuff will continue to flow into the Tijuana River Valley and into the Pacific Ocean. So Katie Porter was saying, I will declare a state of emergency if I become governor. And this, of course, as you know, Sandra, frees up a lot of federal funding for mitigation projects, not just right on the river, but also for people who have been affected by the pollution. But, and some of that money would have to be spent on the river itself. Do we put in another treatment plant right as the river enters the U.S., or do we divert the river? There's a lot of things that need to be done. And all of them, unfortunately, are going to cost billions of dollars.
Well, and also we have to consider Mexico's cooperation in this too, because the problem is sewage coming from Mexico and entering the United States, right?
Right. And Lee Zeldin, who is the administrator for the Environmental Protection Agency, was in town not too long ago. And he was praising. He actually said Mexico is finally getting serious about taking care of this problem south of the border. He said that Mexico is involved in other talks. I would imagine he was talking about the USMCA trade agreement. He said, we will force Mexico. If Mexico doesn't comply with this environmental disaster that we have on our hands, if it doesn't do anything about it, we will take measures to, in a way, hurt Mexico in other ways, economic ways, perhaps, tourism. There's other avenues, as he was saying, that we can force Mexico into finally playing ball and taking care of what's been described as the worst environmental disaster in the Western Hemisphere.
you know, it's good to hear that Mexico's taking ownership in this. It was a little disheartening to hear porters say that, you know, the area that is being affected, that people aren't rich enough for the rest of the country to care about. Is that kind of how you feel? Is that what people are expressing out there?
I do, and we've always said it. Reporters, when we gather, like yesterday, we talk about it, and nothing got serious, or things weren't getting done until a few years ago when the pollution started drifting northward, north of Imperial Beach, reaching the city of Coronado, which is a very affluent area in San Diego County. Once their beaches started getting tainted and people weren't allowed to go swimming, and the Hotel del Coronado, which is extremely famous, a hip spot, everybody wants to stay there. Once the hotel would say, hey, our guests can't go in the water and it smells, that's when finally other politicians from that part of the county started to get serious, started to get involved, and we suddenly started seeing some funding money coming in for the international wastewater treatment plant. We heard that now Mexico was building a similar plant just south of the border, which is complete, but not operating at full capacity. So things got started when Coronado to the north, when its residents were affected. That's when we started to see some results. Of course, there's still a very long way to go. Mexico is also thinking about setting up trash booms. We have discussed this issue. There's a trash boom, a 450-foot long trash boom just inside U.S. territory, and it captures all the floating trash that comes in via the river. It's been a fantastic success. It's been implemented, put in place. This is the second year, and it's holding tens, dozens of tons of trash during storms. So it's been a huge benefit to the area as far as keeping all this trash from flowing and ended up in the Tijuana River Valley or out in the ocean. Mexico, from what I'm told from a very good source, is thinking about doing this. In fact, it has says it will go ahead and do it. In fact, they have gone from saying we will do it to entering the stage where they're actually designing the booms, figuring out where they're going to place them along the river to stop the trash. Is it going to keep everything away from the U.S.? Probably not, but it will be a big help once it does go into place.
And I'm sure you'll be following that every step of the way. Stay dry out there. Our Salvador Rivera, California correspondent, thanks so much for joining with us. We're going to take a quick break. Stick with us. Border Report Live will be right back. Welcome back to Border Report Live. I'm Sandra Sanchez in Harlingen, Texas. Yesterday on the show, we told you about the death of a Georgia school teacher in Savannah, Linda Davis. Now there have been dozens of people gathering to protest immigration and customs enforcement with the belief that the agency is responsible for her death. Reporter Isabella Baez has the story.
Just a day after Savannah school teacher Linda Davis died, a protest held in response. Organizers say their goal is to abolish ICE.
Justice for Linda Davis! Justice for Linda Davis!
The Savannah Party for Socialism and Liberation organized an emergency protest. They say it's a direct response to the death of Linda Davis. Organizers saying she deserves justice, and the immigration and custom enforcement officers involved in the pursuit should be held accountable.
She's a teacher, a school teacher, a beloved member of this community, and we're here today to say that we actually demand justice, for not only the teacher, but also for, all the people who have been terrorized by ICE.
People in attendance tell WSAV they believed if ICE officers were never in Savannah, that crash never would have happened, and Dr. Davis would still be alive.
Because when it comes to this chase, it never should have happened, and ICE actually shouldn't be in our communities to begin with.
I was extremely hurt for something like that to happen in this city. I know we've been watching nationally how the effects of ICE in certain cities, but for something like that to happen here, it hurt.
City of Savannah District 2 Alderman Dietrich Leggett also agreeing that the incident never should have happened, and local law enforcement were never aware of the ICE pursuit.
Before you start making those type of actions happen in the city of Savannah, you need to check in. You have to talk to our chief, you have to talk to our city manager before those type of things happen, even talk to the sheriff. So there's a lot of entities that have to be at the table.
Organizers and city officials in attendance say they share their condolences to Dr. Davis's family, friends, students, and anyone who knew her. Reporting in Savannah, I'm Isabel Baez, WSAV News 3 on your side.
Davis died in a crash on Monday after a 38-year-old man was fleeing ICE agents. Police say he ran a red light, made an illegal U-turn, and crashed into Davis. Moving on, in Minnesota, federal authorities are investigating claims that immigration officers shattered a Mexican man's skull while taking him into custody last month. Alberto Castañeda Mondragon says agents yanked him from a vehicle, slammed him down, and beat him with a baton. ICE has said the man caused his own injuries when he tried to run while handcuffed and fell. Hospital workers have told the Associated Press that explanation does not match the CT scan and brain bleeding that he received. Both St. Paul Police and the FBI last week requested surveillance video from businesses in the shopping center where the arrest happened. And an immigration judge has dismissed the Trump administration's deportation case against a Palestinian graduate student and Colombia protest leader. The federal judge said government lawyers made a procedural mistake by failing to certify a piece of evidence as required by federal law against Mohsen Mashrawi. The administration can appeal the decision, though it is unclear if they will. The case is part of a wider rush to remove pro-Palestinian campus activists. Last month, another judge blocked the deportation of a Tufts student who had written an op-ed criticizing the university's response to the war in Gaza. And leaders in small cities and towns across the country have recently been surprised to learn that ICE plans to open detention facilities in their communities. It's part of a $38 billion plan to expand ICE bed detention facilities nationwide. From Tennessee to Georgia, many states and in between are looking at how ICE's plans have played out in between the country. Tori Gessner explains.
In Lebanon, a federal plan appears to be taking shape, with local and state leaders in the dark, some denying it's happening altogether.
It looks like somebody's gotten some misinformation and they're spreading this information here locally. There is no ICE facility coming to Lebanon, Tennessee that we can find.
But we've been told differently. A spokesperson for ICE confirming in an email the agency bought a facility to house detainees in Lebanon, Tennessee.
And I'm not going to do a confirmation just on one email. We've been through this enough that there's sometimes things that are misled or it is not actually a fact.
While leaders here are still questioning whether the plans are real, similar situations are already playing out in towns and cities across the country. In Hanover County, Virginia, officials say they found out about the federal government's plans already underway to buy an ICE detention facility there through a letter from the Department of Homeland Security.
The lack of early communication from the federal government has created understandable concern as well as a substantial amount of confusion and misunderstanding.
Town officials in Social Circle, Georgia, said they found out about a detention center in their town through media reports. The town's social media page said they then scheduled a meeting with ICE, but claim the deputy chief of staff never showed up. And in Durant, Oklahoma, the mayor says a group connected to the federal government reached out to the county sheriff about buying an old Big Lots warehouse inside city limits.
No one ever approached the city directly and still haven't. So we're just responding to that along with the rest of the community to say that, we didn't think this was a good idea to have within our city limits, and the Choctaw Nation especially didn't want to have it on their campus where we're trying to operate our federal government and carry out the business that we carry out.
Durant City Council passing an ordinance requiring the city's permission before opening a federal detention facility in Durant, effectively blocking ICE facilities for now. The mayor suggests officials in Tennessee do the same if they don't want an ICE facility in their city, also encouraging them to work with the stakeholders to try to influence the outcome.
The operation, the activity is not illegal. So, they need to talk with whoever owns that facility. And that was the first thing that we did. And we said, listen, we want you to be our neighbor, although you're a private equity, probably East Coast based firm. They don't really know Durant, Oklahoma. They just own the property. We said, please don't do this to our city.
That was Tori Gessner reporting. Stay with us. We're going to take a short break. Border Report Live. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Border Report Live. I'm Sandra Sanchez. Changes at the Department of Homeland Security are coming. Tricia McLaughlin, a top spokesperson and an assistant secretary for public affairs, plans to step down. McLaughlin is a strong defender of the Trump administration's policies, and she frequently appeared on TV to highlight DHS's work and defend its most controversial actions. A source told our partner The Hill that McLaughlin initially planned to leave the department in December and that she had delayed her departure amid the intense coverage to the shootings of Renee Good and Alex Preddy in Minneapolis. But now she is expected to leave her post next week. And as many of you might know, today is Ash Wednesday. This begins the Christian Lenten season. It marks a solemn day of fasting and reflection. It signals the start of Lent, one of the holiest times of the year for Catholics and for many other Christians. And they will spend the next 40 days in prayer, fasting, and repenting of sins. Well, we'll spend the next several days telling you all that's going on at the border. So continue to join us on Border Report Live, and we will see you soon. Thank you.